Okay, so there's sign-ins that are here somewhere. I think they're getting passed around. If you can please sign in, there's a question on there. One of the things that I'm going to talk about today is a change in plan. So there's a question on there regarding the potential of having a marijuana symposium coming up in early 2019. So if that's something that may interest you, please make sure you indicate that on the sign-in. Keep the sign-ins getting passed around, and at the end of the day, whoever ends up with it, if you could maybe just leave it in the spot or leave it on the end.
Empty one.
Empty one, fantastic. Why don't you, where are our sign-ins right now? We got one here, anybody on that side? Okay, why don't we get one started over on this side, and then that can be kind of passed around. So, as I said, I did say, just kidding. So I'm Melissa Moore. I do the Drug Free Communities program through the AOD Partnership in the Marion County Health Department. My role is to help lead alcohol and drug prevention work, so I'm happy to see our turnout today. I know we have a number of students, we have a number of professionals and colleagues and individuals in the community that want to know a little bit more about this topic, which is hugely important because our meeting topic today is addiction in the criminal justice system. So we're just going to talk very briefly about the impact and really more about what's happening in the community to support individuals in recovery and to you know, just kind of some of the things and the nuances that maybe people aren't aware of, because it's not as easy as everybody should get everything they want, when they need it. It's not that simple. So we're going to kind of get started with that. And again, like I said, you know, we have more people than I had planned today. I should have known the time when I choose 30 copies. We have like 50 people. So I do appreciate if you can share with individuals around you. It will be all posted online as well. You know, we'll have the agenda up here, but any of our handouts that have been given out, I'll make sure they all get posted by the end of the day tomorrow and go out in our update. It's important to have your emails because in doing so, we'll be able to get you on that AOD Partnership update list, so you'll be able to get these handouts and notifications as they come out. So welcome everybody to the AOD Partnership meeting. Let me remember how to get this down. There we go. Our agenda today is very briefly just going to share with you a little bit about what we're going to talk about. Just kidding. Maybe I won't. Okay, there we go. So our agenda, besides the welcome, you know, with this many people, I'd love to do introductions, go around, but please make sure you introduce yourselves to each other. A couple things that are on the back of your agendas, some of the updates that are going to be up here, as well as you should have also got a partner updates handout that has some of our partner events coming up. So I'm just kind of roll through these things. The first thing on the agenda was we are recruiting for our AOD Partnership Board. Looks like some of what I put on here is missing. So the AOD Partnership Board is as a nonprofit, we do have a 15-member board. We're going to be recruiting for 5 at-large members, as well as you know, looking at other individuals that are maybe interested, maybe as an ad hoc position, depending on interest. I do have applications available. I can send it to you. Just contact me if you're interested. It is a monthly commitment, and as far as meetings go, but you know, it's a working board. It's not just coming together and kind of telling me what to do. If you've ever been on a nonprofit board, sometimes that happens. I see nonprofit staff like, yes. But yeah, I love my board, and I think I have a number of board members here today. If I could get a show of hands of current board members, 2, former board members. Hi, Bob. Didn't see that good. You snuck in on me. So, you know, we're probably going to be closing that at the end of October. One of the things that I'm super excited about, which again, I see didn't show up on the actual slides, I must have had a glitch when I downloaded it, is we are going to be hosting Jeff Van Vonderen, if you're familiar with the TV show Intervention. This is a training that I've been teasing you with now for a number of months. Finally nailed down the date and the times. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're actually going to be we're going to be housed over at the new Health Sciences Auditorium. They just redid it. But we're going to have an evening session on the 29th, and that's going to be 6:30 to 8:30, or 6 to 8:30, 6 to 8:30. And we're going to be kind of looking at that. How do you empower individuals that are struggling with addiction but not enable them? It's more of a family focused. And then on Friday the 30th, we're going to have help in helping professions. going to be looking at not only how to help yourself, because you gotta say mental health for yourself as well, but how to help others with a kind, compassionate heart. So very excited to have that. I'm hoping to get registration open for that within the next week or two. So watch for that coming out, and please help us share that information. Other kind of opportunities, learning opportunities, the alcohol policy seminars coming up next week. There's a opiate and meth conference down in Milwaukee at the end of the month. There's also one that is not included on this is the state's substance abuse. It's a mental health and recovery conference in October as well. And that's pretty close to the same time as this one that's on your screen currently. There is scholarships for individuals that are in recovery or consumers for that conference, and that's been going out through the updates, and it'll go out again this week. So, and for anybody that is interested, works in, lives in, interested in the work that's happening in Western Marathon County, please take advantage of getting involved in this group. It actually started through the AOD Partnership and recognizing that there needs to be some work done out there, and they've kind of taken it and ran with it in helping young ones. Please make sure that you fill out your evaluations. You should have all gotten one. If you didn't get one, what I'm going to do is it's going to end up going out through the update. Or you can, whoever you're sharing with, handouts, please make sure that you kind of fill that out too, because that'll be helpful again for us going forward to continue to justify kind of what it is that we do. I'll probably make that link a survey link so you can just fill it out. So if you don't want to fill a paper copy out, you can fill it out there. This meeting is being recorded for our YouTube channel, so you can share it after the fact. You can also tune in for any other meetings that we've had in the past. Partner updates, Mosaic, if you've heard of Mosaic, it was housed at Emmanuel Lutheran, right down kind of by Angelo's off 6th Street. It is actually changing its focus, and instead of having a set location, they're doing some restructuring on that. So I don't want to give too much out on that until Jeff's ready, but it's going to be more of a Mosaic on the move. So instead of having full walls to help support recovery, it's going to be moving to what's happening in the community. Another thing is that, like I mentioned, we are going to be looking at doing a marijuana symposium. All the discussion around decriminalization, recreational use, legalization, just all of those kind of facets. I think it's important that we have that conversation in the community, as well as bringing in individuals from other states that have had legalization. So I'm looking at doing that in February of 2019 as a result, and with all the great recovery, supportive things that have been happening here in Marathon County, we're going to be not having a recovery summit this year in November, so I do apologize if you're looking forward to that. It is an annual, we've had it twice, so we're not going to end up having that this year, but there is a likelihood that there'll be some sort of updates on that coming up. So with that, you have other partner updates. There's a number of events. Big Boys and Girls Club has their annual fundraiser. The Big Taste, you have the evening of jazz that supports Community Clubhouse. You have the new Wheels to Work voucher program information and how to access that, as well as Empty Bowls raffle for the Neighbor's Place. So is there any other partner events, or anybody want to elaborate on kind of what I just shared already? Hearing none. We're going to move in then to our presenters today. So I'm pretty excited that we have a great panel of representatives from different programs and initiatives, and can really speak to the impact of addiction in the criminal justice system, because as we know, addiction really does impact people on many different levels, whether it's their families, whether it's school, whether it's work. That interaction with the criminal justice system also is very highly likely when you have addictions within your family or within yourself as an individual. So one of the individuals that wasn't able to join us today is Chris Zeman, who helps head up the Joseph Project. That was one of our handouts today, and again, that'll be posted online. But Chris did give me an update. They just wrapped up their 6th orientation for the Joseph Project, which is a multi-day intake for individuals that are coming out of the criminal justice system, maybe coming out of treatment, but they're looking to get back into the workforce. So they go through a variety of different skill building sessions, and then on the final day they get to interview with local business. One of their major business partners is Colby & Colby. that has brought a number of individuals into their business. But the program itself is a great program. It's a faith-based program that comes out of Milwaukee and is heavily backed by Representative Johnson. So you have that information sheet. I'm sorry if you don't have it in front of you. As I said, while I'm sitting here, I may just post all this stuff so that you have it right away. And so I just wanted to kind of give you an update on that. So I'm going to turn it over to, we're going to start with Ronda Zastrow from Marathon County Jail. And I'll have her introduce herself and her position. But then we're going to kind of work down the line. What I'm going to ask you is, because we have a number of presenters today, as well as we have Jesse, Leur here to talk about his experience as a person in recovery that has gone through the justice system and some of the things that he's seen that are beneficial. I'm going to try to save questions till the end. If you have a burning question, absolutely, when it's at that point in time. This meeting is not meant to be badgering any of our presenters today. I just want to put that out there, is that we're in this together. We're trying to figure things out. So if you have something that's very personal to you, maybe about a loved one, that you want to know more about how to get that person into maybe some of these programs, or why they haven't been in some of these programs, this is not that time and place. So I'm just going to put that out there. We're going to have information about from our presenters, so there'll be an opportunity to connect with them as well. But I just want this to be this is a learning experience, so it's not about badgering anybody, okay? I mean, we make that all right for everybody. So you see a little bit about the benefit of getting access to effective treatment, between $4 and $7 in reduced drug crime, criminal justice costs, and theft. Nationally, about 80% of individuals that are within the criminal justice system have gotten there due to alcohol and drug use. It may not be drug dealing or drug selling or alcohol OWIs. It could be things like domestics, theft, and so on. So, it's a very complex issue. Addiction does run deep, and it is definitely a key factor. So with that, I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to invite Ronda up. My speakers, we do have a microphone here. If you're a quiet speaker, if you'd like to hide behind the podium, that's fine. That speaker is for our public access. So this is a good area here to sit and talk. So I just ask you to speak up. And if you feel you need a microphone, I am not actually sure if this is even on. No. You did. It's green. Just keep hitting it. No. No microphone for you. So I am going to,
Hello. Many of you know me as Ronda from the jail. This is a huge group. I am super intimidated by the size of the group, although very impressed. All of you have shown up. Thank you. I don't speak very loudly, and clearly I'm not tall enough to stand behind the podium. So, wave if you want me to try to yell louder. I also do not have a fancy presentation devised here. I just have some bullet points. I'm going to try to cover some of the topics. Honestly, I'm not going to paint you a pretty picture. The impact of addiction on the criminal justice system, specifically the jail, is not positive, pretty much in any way. I am hoping, though, that at the end of the panel, that the criminal justice system will be able to tell you about some benefits to the addiction issue. So we'll do our best. I'm going to start with just a quick overview of our facility. The Marathon County Jail has a capacity of 279 individuals. So that is how many we are legally able to house. On any given day, we are about 100 people over that amount, which means that we have to house them out of county at other jails in our state. Right now, we are sharing with 7 other jails. I think that our furthest ones are Marquette and like Outagamie area. So that's several hours of transport just so that we can stay within the law. To give you a visual of our detox area, we have 16 receiving cells and 2 medical cells. And those all are not only for detox, those are for all of our disciplines, our medical observations, suicide watches, and detox. So as you can imagine, we probably have more than 16 people detoxing along with all of those other factors. So space is definitely an issue for us. Including limited space, we do have 3 program rooms, so classrooms essentially. We run 97 hours of programming a week. Pretty much any time of day that we can have a class in there, we have one going. Although only 10 hours a week are addiction-based, recovery-based programs. And all of those are run by volunteers, so they are not clinical services. Clinical services cost money. When individuals are in jail, they lose their health care benefits. Most of our population is on Badger Care. Badger Care is a government benefit. When you live in a government institution, you can't be on a government benefit, and therefore you don't have any coverage. So none of our local agencies that provide clinical AODA services have agreed to perform those services without collecting fees, and the jail just can't pay for the fees. So we count on our volunteers. I will put out an invitation. Anyone who is part of the Narcotics Anonymous community, we do not have any NA groups running in our facility. We have not had anyone agree to come in and do that. I had a group of guys from Stevens Point that agreed to come up and do that, but I think it was just the travel. It was very short-lived. So that would, to me, be the most clinical structured, evidence-based program that we could get, and we don't have it. So please call me if you are interested. Let's go back to the healthcare. So when someone loses their Badger Care, they're also not eligible to set up any other treatment programs. So sometimes the individual, their family, their lawyer would like to get them into another treatment program, but most of the treatment programs are not willing to work with them unless they can guarantee payment, coverage. And so you kind of got the chicken before the egg. So you have to wait till someone gets out of jail, they have to reactivate their benefits, and then they have to apply the program, which therefore does not get them out of jail to start the program. Let's see. I will now tell you the most depressing part of my job. I've worked at the jail a long time. And over the last 15 years, maybe 1 or 2 pregnant girls would come into jail a year. The last couple of years have exploded. It is really, really disheartening. I counted it up this morning, and I am shocked myself. I have had contact with 66 pregnant females since August of 2016. A little over a year ago, I had 12 people at one time. That is consuming. Right now, I only have 4. Very thankful. But that is where our resources really get kind of honed in. Transports to medical appointments, even simple things like an extra mattress, extra food, the extra time and attention that it takes to care for those individuals. It is really heartbreaking. Some good things we have in place are some partnerships with the Start Right program at the health department. We have an adoption specialist we work with through Ruth and Social Services. The Department of Social Services is great. We communicate all the time. Social workers at Aspirus. So we have this whole team of individuals that will help to work toward the best outcome possible in a really awful situation. All right, so I'm going to try to leave you with a couple of positive things that we do that I think are worth mentioning. So the medically monitored treatment program is the 21-day inpatient through the healthcare center. We have a great partnership with them. They do take Badger Care, and they know that when someone comes from the jail that they can activate those services, the benefits to have those services. So they have agreed to come in and every other week assess people who meet baseline criteria. They are, they're really understanding. Some of our individuals are not super easy to deal with sometimes, and they're still willing to come in every other week and try to get that pathway established. So that's been working out well. We do release planning, so anyone within 30 days of release is invited to meet with me and talk about what they'd like to set up before they leave. It's completely voluntary. Some people set up their medical appointments, dental, AODA, mental health, whatever they are interested in pursuing when they get out of jail. We do that. There is one very small set of criteria that allows certain people to pre-enroll for Badger Care. So we do have a connection with Bridge Clinic, and they let people pre-enroll, so we do that once a month also. And then we have started to have conversations with the recovery coaching community to partner people with a recovery coach before getting out if they're interested in that too. Again, voluntary. We really like to run everything in jail on a voluntary basis. They're already in an environment that they cannot control, so we want that individual to have some ownership over their choices. And then we don't want to suck the resources either. We don't want to mandate something that nobody wants. That's a waste of everyone's time. So we try to really match up the support we get with individuals who are truly in a place to receive that. So I know a lot of what I said wasn't super glowing, but I do believe that there are so many great individuals in this community that have their hearts in the right place, and that somehow we're gonna make things improve. I really don't know how, but we're all willing to work together, clearly. And that means something. Okay. Thank you.
I am going to use the podium because I need to look at my notes and I don't want to hold it for too long. Alright. So yes, Ronda, this is a much larger crowd than I expected. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Cati Denfeld and I am a probation and parole supervisor in Marin County. I was a probation and parole agent for about 10 years and I've been a supervisor for between 2 and 3 years. So I'm here, I was asked also to come to talk about the impacts of drug and alcohol abuse on the criminal justice system and where that fits in with probation and parole. I didn't bring any specific stats or numbers, but I think anecdotally, say that word right, we know that it is very much ingrained in the majority of the clients that we see, that it overlaps with the criminal behaviors that we're seeing. I think we hear the number 80% thrown around a lot. I'm not sure if that number has been reevaluated in the recent past, but we have a significant AODA issue in our clientele, and it is challenging. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and what that means for us. So first, I'd just like to kind of give you a little background on what we're doing in the probation and parole realm right now. So probation and parole is Department of Community Corrections. So we operate under the Department of Corrections, which is a statewide agency. The state of Wisconsin is a national leader in what you hear referred to as evidence-based practices. So we're really trying to change the way we're doing things with how we supervise clients and do it in an evidence-based way. So using the research to make informed decisions and best practices. So one of the things, what that means when we get somebody on supervision, whether it be through probation or releasing from prison, what we do is we use a validated assessment tool to assess risk and needs. And so we want to know if the person in front of us is risky to reoffend in criminal behavior and what their needs are. So needs can be a lot of different things, but it can talk about their needs when it comes to drug and alcohol abuse, so needs for treatment, needs for stability factors like residential housing, employment, vocation, things like that. So one of the things that we know now from the research is that alcohol and drug is a major player in criminal behavior, but it's not necessarily commonly the driving factor in criminal behavior. So what we do when we get somebody and we assess them, we are looking a lot of the time at some of the top areas of need that, or of risk that fall under what we want to address. So that would be what we call like thoughts and beliefs, so cognitive behavioral. So if somebody's thoughts and beliefs impact how they behave, we want to be able to make sure that the thoughts and beliefs that they have are congruent with our pro-social values of what society asks for. So for example, one of the current barriers and one of the current paradoxes is, some people's thoughts and beliefs is that, marijuana, for example, isn't unhealthy and it's not a bad thing to use. So if your thought is that it's not bad, you're way more likely to use it than if your thought is that it is bad, right? So it's illegal, and so that's another way of, approaching it as far as how you view things. Even though it's illegal, are you willing to take the risk of, using it? Is it that important based on the laws that we are facing? So that falls into oftentimes a different realm, which is like problem solving, and coping skills and things that we want to address that are related to impulse and behavior. So again, it gets quite complicated, but the point is that we address AODA, but we address it kind of in a roundabout way. We try to use that very cognitive approach. We see AODA as a high need for the majority of our clients, so we are doing referrals out for that in the community. We are lucky in this community. We have a pretty extensive base of resources in the community. Across the state, that's not always the case. So we use things with the Department of Corrections. We use our own contracted provider. We use ADIC, Correctional Services, that provide a range of services regarding AODA and thinking, cognitive behavioral approaches, anger management, other things like that. We also partner with the healthcare center and use them heavily for referring clients with a high need in AODA, the MMT program that Ronda had mentioned, the outpatient programming, the individual counselors that the healthcare center has. Also within probation and parole, we do have services across the state, different residential programs that we utilize to refer people to, but the resources are limited. That's always a barrier when you come to AODA, is what the resources are and how accessible they are. And we also have our institution programming that's within the prison system. So if we send somebody into a prison institution system to receive treatment and then come back to the community. So just, I don't want to talk super long, but just to kind of back up, I want to make sure that people understand that probation and parole does get put in a difficult position. I know Melissa kind of sometimes talks about the black and white of what's legal and what's not. The department has really changed a lot over the past 10 years as far as how we view addiction. It is definitely recognized as a disease within the department. It's recognized as a violation or a potential criminal behavior, but it's also recognized as, you know, at times use can be relapse and it can be, I don't want to say acceptable, but expected or normal under certain circumstances. So that's a huge barrier for us when we're approaching how to work with somebody. We want to consider how their use impacts their overall risk. So if they're a violent person and that's exacerbated by using, that's different for us than, you know, maybe the converse. So it's a lot of case-by-case decision-making when it comes to use, but we definitely are trying to partner with people and be, we're trying to be somebody that's there to help the client that we have in front of us find the resources that they need. One of the, I'm gonna talk about several barriers that we have. One of the things that, I don't know if everyone knows this, one of the things is we cannot require people on probation and parole, extended supervision, to attend NA or AA because of the religious component to it. So we can encourage it, we can allow it, we can, when people want to do that, we can certainly support them in that, but we cannot make it a condition or a requirement of their supervision. So a couple of the barriers I have listed here. So I have written down use versus treatment compliance. So a lot of the times what we face with probation and parole is somebody uses and we don't necessarily respond in a very heightened fashion, but rather try to get them into a treatment program, get the referral made, and get somebody to the help that they need. The problem with that is treatment compliance. So oftentimes we're holding people accountable not just for using, but rather for not complying with the treatment that we're requiring of them. So that's part of probation, is that if we refer somebody to, or parole, or extended supervision, if we refer somebody to a program based on the behaviors that we're seeing, they're expected to do it. So if you're using as a client on probation parole and then you're also not meeting that requirement of going to treatment, that's kind of compounding at times, and that's one of the big things that we see where perception is that that person's in trouble for using, when oftentimes it's that they're not complying with efforts to stop that using behavior. Another barrier is the treatment providers when people on supervision don't show up, when they miss appointments, and that causes, you know, other people to not get an appointment or a bed space or a resource that they're looking for. That I don't want to. People don't get unlimited chances to do that sometimes with certain treatment providers. So if we refer somebody one time and they don't cooperate, and then they present that they're willing to change or they're ready to change, and then they don't cooperate again, sometimes that treatment provider doesn't want to work with that person anymore, and so then that limits our resources more. So that's another barrier that we have. Ongoing relapse, actively in the nature of the drugs, on how powerful some of them are. Somebody is in treatment and complying, and they just continue to use over and over and over again. Kind of a very significant issue that we have right now is where does that balance fall when it comes to, we don't believe in progressive sanctioning per se, but at what point how do we address it? How do we change the way we're addressing it to try something differently when someone's not being successful in the treatment, even though they're participating? Higher level of care is the obvious answer usually, but we don't always have a higher level of care accessible to us. So, and then a common thing that we see with clients on probation and parole is absconding and or falsifying UAs. So that speaks to a larger issue of the person's readiness to change and willingness to change. And I think some of that comes from the misconception that the probation agent is there to catch them and get them in trouble. And that's not really the case. The point of the matter is that accountability factor is really important part of the recovery. So if that person stops reporting or runs from probation and parole because they know that they're going to be dirty for a UA, for example, that is a major barrier, and it's a barrier that it to some extent falls on the agent to try to overcome with the rapport and relationship building and an understanding that the agent does want to help the person overcome their addiction. But again, it really lies a lot on the willingness to change. And then lastly, and the biggest one, kind of that Ronda also was touching on, is just overall accountability and keeping people safe. So relapse is, I want to say, understood, but it can't always be tolerated under certain circumstances. So for example, if we do find a pregnant female who's using a very serious drug like meth or heroin, we will most likely incarcerate that person for the safety of the fetus, and that seems, I think, logical to most people. But then there's also other layers to that. Self-harm, we sometimes incarcerate people because we really truly believe that they're their own worst enemy, and if we don't put them in a confined setting, they may end up overdosing. And maybe we can find them and work with them again at a later time when they're in a better position to change. And then lastly, like I had touched on before, the legalities of if they're committing other crimes while using, which often is the case, stealing, things like that. Drug trafficking is a big one. It's a really blurry line between somebody who's using and somebody who's dealing. And we used to, I think, define it a lot more black and white. You have your dealers who just want to make money, and you have your users who just want drugs. And those lines get blurred because you have the users who want to get their drugs, but they know the dealer and are doing the favor, and so before you know it, we have a lot of new criminal behavior on our hands that we can't ignore. So those are our barriers to working with people who are drug addicted and alcohol addicted as well. I know I kind of focused on drugs more. Maybe it's because I just see that more prevalent, and it's maybe more the resurging issue that we like to talk about these days. I would agree with Ronda that there are a lot of minds together working on this issue, and a lot of people who really are trying to solve it. And it's a very tough issue to, there's so much theory and philosophy that goes behind how to approach this the right way. But one positive thing is that Marathon County does have a drug court now. And it's in its earlier stages, and I've already talked enough, so I'm gonna let, we're just a team member on the drug court, but there's a lot of other people that do a lot of work with drug court. So I'll let Yarie talk about that when it's her turn to speak. So I think that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you. They do have the handout. And all the handouts are posted online. If you can't access them, email me and I will try to figure out why, but you should be able to access them.
All right, my name is Ruth Heinzl. I work in the district attorney's office. I am the diversion coordinator. So my handout is this one, yours is colored. We don't have colored printers, so mine is black and white. So I guess both jail and probation and parole, those are both post-sentence programs. So what I'm going to talk to you about is what happens during the whole process of prosecuting somebody from arrest through to sentencing. So I guess when you talk about diversion in general, the first time you can divert somebody from the criminal justice system is with law enforcement contact. So for the most part, a law enforcement officer usually takes someone to jail if they have a felony or a domestic charge, because they're required to take someone to jail if there is a domestic incident due to state laws, and then for felony charges, they usually go to jail. So like, you know, since meth and heroin are prevalent in our community, a lot of those people end up going to jail, and then they stay there a night or two before they appear in court. So with the law enforcement contact, the law enforcement officer can decide whether or not to arrest somebody or divert them in another way. So one way that they can divert people is by sending the report to the district attorney's office for review instead of arrest, or something similar to that. So any criminal activity that's at the misdemeanor level goes to the district attorney's office for review for charging. I guess here it would be important to note that in the last, I think, 5 years, there's been like a 400% increase in meth and heroin cases. So it's kind of crazy. Alcohol used to be the problem, and now it's not that problem anymore. Meth and heroin is a huge issue. So part of my job is offering treatment for first-time offenders, and we have a lot of first-time offenders who have felony charges, which used to not be the fact. And the felony charges are usually meth and heroin. And to get somebody into treatment that's a first-time offender under a meth or heroin charge is very difficult to do. So I'll talk about that a little more in a second. So I guess the next part of that talks about the district attorney, either when they receive a case, they can decide either to charge the case or not charge the case, or the basic things that they usually decide. Otherwise, the district attorney refers the file to me for a deferred prosecution option, a pre-charge conference, or an operating after revocation diversion program. So the pre-charge diversion program, the legislator passed something called Act 33. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of that, but anybody that overdoses on heroin that gets arrested due to like having paraphernalia on them or something like that, they are required to be offered a deferred prosecution agreement so that they have the opportunity to get treatment instead of going to jail. So we do offer that. There hasn't been that many people actually that have been referred due to Act 33, but and it's just very hard to get those people motivated to go to treatment. And even though, I mean, overdosing to you and me may be scary, but when people are addicted to heroin with Narcan, people expect overdosing, I feel like, these days. Because, we have Narcan, it's okay, I'll come back. So it's very difficult to get those people connected with treatment. Pre-charge conference is an option that the district attorneys can do. So what that is they can review a case, and a lot of times it's with first-time offenders, maybe a felony charge where they're like, okay, I don't want this person to have a criminal record. Let's have a conference with the defense attorney and talk about it prior to the charges even being filed. So they can maybe come to an agreement on what they want to do before the charges get filed, and if they come to an agreement, they may be charged with a lesser crime than the felony from the beginning of the case. And then the OAR diversion program. So OAR is operating after revocation. That is a criminal misdemeanor charge. Operating after revocation, the only way you can get that is where you don't have your driver's license. Is that you don't have your driver's license due to an OWI. So if you get an operating while intoxicated charge, you are required to do an alcohol and drug assessment and follow through with whatever that recommendation is. If you haven't done that, you don't get your license back, or if you weren't in compliance, you don't get your license back. And so then if you get pulled over and you don't have your license, you get an operating after revocation. So basically what our pre-charge operating after revocation program does is try to help connect those people with doing the assessment and help them figure out how to get their license back, because there's a lot of other barriers other than just completing the assessment that people have, like paying fees and all that stuff. So that's just prior to all this stuff I'm talking about is prior to the person even being charged. So I don't know how many people of you know about CCAP. So this is prior to people even showing up in CCAP. You don't show up in CCAP until you're officially charged by the district attorney. So the first hearing that a person goes to is called their initial appearance. That is what starts a person's case, basically opens it, and then gives them the court dates that through the rest of their prosecution. And then preliminary hearings are only for felony charges, just to decide whether or not there's probable cause to go forward with a felony. That's a really complicated process. So then pretrial conferences is where people discuss the offer that they want to come to, the agreement that they want to come to at the plea and sentencing with the defense attorney and the district attorney. So at this time, I have a huge amount of people that are in deferred entry of judgment agreements. So these are post-charge diversion options. So for meth and heroin cases, a lot of those, since that is a felony charge, we do have people go on misdemeanor probation with a deferred entry of judgment on the felony charge, so they don't become a felon. So they may be convicted of a misdemeanor of some sort, but we at least help them not become a felon. So if they're on probation, they'll be required to do AODA programming. If they make it through probation successfully, then they won't get charged with the felony. If they don't make it through successfully, they'll be charged and sentenced on the felony. Community conferencing program. This, I guess, to deal with addiction, usually community conferencing program has to have a victim. And when you think of possession of drugs, there's no real victim other than yourself. But so a lot of times if there's drugs and alcohol involved, usually it's a criminal damage to property, a theft, a burglary, something like that. So community conferencing programs brings people from the community and the victim and the defendant together at a table, and they discuss the incident. The offender takes responsibility for what they did, and then they figure out how they can repair harm. So a lot of times they will ask them to do alcohol and drug counseling if that was an issue for them. And then they can pay back the money that they owe to fix whatever they did and other things like that. So I know Cati talked about added correctional services. Many of the people, I have about 630 people on my caseload. So the majority of the people that I have do go to added correctional services for their programming. So I don't know how many people of you know about ADDIC, but they're basically provide a lot of services for people in the criminal justice system. So on the bottom of the page lists the basic things that ADDIC provides. The main things I use are diversion case management. I guess diversion case management is the only thing that I really use personally. The condition of bond program Those are people, so at your initial appearance, you sign your bond. When you're out in bond, there are things called bond conditions. So one of the bond conditions can be, especially for felony drug charges, can be drug testing. So condition of bond has a case manager, basically sign someone up for drug testing and monitor and make sure that they're complying with that. Do they monitor anything else, Laura? Other than drug testing?
Just compliance for court and court obligations that they're ordered to.
Yeah. So yeah, if there's any other court things that they need to follow, but usually for bond conditions, there's not much that is required of them other than no contact with the victim and absolute sobriety. So SSTOP is for operating while intoxicated. Individuals have an opportunity to have a lesser sentence if they comply prior to sentencing with a bunch of requirements. So diversion case management, it provides case managers who help people go through cognitive behavioral groups and different kinds of educational groups. Then there's OWI court and drug court that Laura will talk to you about. In CMTS, Case Management Treatment Services, is the program that Probation and Parole use for their people to go through for their cognitive behavioral groups and AODA groups. I think that's it. So.
I'm Laura Yarie. I'm the Justice System Coordinator for Marathon County. My position, I've been in my position for over 15 years. I oversee all the alternative programs in Marathon County. My position is part of county administration. I am the contract administrator for a lot of the services, including the services over at Addict Correctional Services. My job also is to focus on system improvement. So when Melissa says, don't badger me, I'm leaving my business cards. If anybody has questions or concerns or feedback about services or needed services, I welcome that feedback because it is my position to try and make improvements. And improving the criminal justice system is a difficult thing to do, especially since it's ever-changing and all sorts of new challenges come along every year. Of course, drug and alcohol use is a significant challenge in the criminal justice system. As previous speakers have mentioned, alcohol used to be the primary focus and concern that caused us the most headaches, and nowadays that's fallen by the wayside, and we're really struggling with the meth and heroin addiction that has come into the community full force. A couple of positive things that I can say, when I started years ago, getting people access to treatment was much more difficult. The majority of the people that we worked with were not eligible for medical assistance at all. I had no payer source for any services, whether they were in jail or in the community. And back in those days, we had a small treatment. It didn't even have a mental health component to it. It was basically AODA education that the state attempted to fund and have in place for people on probation and parole that had no funding and had no access to services at all. So that has been a significant improvement, that individuals now have coverage and they have options of places that they can go and try and receive services. As Cati alluded to when she was speaking, there is a real struggle with accountability and treatment. I remember the day where you would have a positive UA and you would go to jail just simply for having a positive UA. And that has been another positive thing, that probation and parole and the system in general has really made a switch into recovery and relapse is expected, and trying to get people services, trying to get people to be honest about their use so that the problem can be dealt with more effectively. When we were talking as a county of how to deal with, as we sometimes refer to people, frequent flyers, those are people that are repeatedly coming back through the system, are addicted to some pretty significant substances, and they come to court and they're told, don't use heroin, can't use drugs anymore. And of course, they're not hooked up with anybody to help them stop using or given any way to help them down the road to following that court order. So we saw them over and over and over again, and I was tasked by the Public Safety Committee with finding a evidence-based program to deal with people with significant addiction issues that are repeatedly coming through the system. And at the time, I was made aware of treatment courts. Now, treatment courts have been around for a long time. The first treatment court was in Miami in 1989. And so there is a lot of research. It's one of the best researched treatment programs out there. There's a lot of research. The NADCP is the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. They have a very nice website with a lot of information, a lot of research about cost effectiveness and the success of drug courts. The drug court model can be used with drug court, it can be used with OWI offenders, it can be used as a mental health court, a veterans court. It's really expanded from the original model, but they all follow the same principles and that make them successful. And so we as a county started back in 2008, we started looking into what we needed to do to get a treatment court up and running. And again, the major stumbling block had always been not only having treatment services locally, but having the right people be able to access them. The people we needed to get into those treatment services were not people who had full-time jobs with benefits. So you can't do a treatment court if you don't have access to treatment at the proper level of care for individuals that need it. So the treatment court, we actually have two. We originally started working with OWI offenders because, as I mentioned, that was a significant problem, the alcohol issue. And not that it's not still a significant issue, it most definitely is. It's just that the horror of meth and heroin is so much bigger that the alcohol has kind of fallen to the wayside. However, we do still have an OWI treatment court, which was our original. We started it actually in 2010. Our team had to first travel for training to Springfield, Missouri in 2009, and then we applied for a federal BJA grant, Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we were able to start our OWI court in the end of 2010. Started taking participants 2011. That program has been very successful. It is a program that takes a very long time. And so when people are considering entering the program, we're very upfront with them about the amount of time and effort, and that if you don't have a desire to get clean and stay clean, it's probably not the program for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So our OWI court has, I believe we have close to 70 graduates now, and it has been very successful with getting people back into life, employed, living on their own. We have several of our graduates that come back and help new people coming into the program. They still volunteer within the community, and they also help us kind of orient new people that are considering the program. So when I talk about drug court, this is a complicated presentation. When we went to training, it was 5 days, so I'm going to give you a very condensed version of what drug court is. Drug court is and when I say drug court, I mean drug and OWI because we operate pretty much the same. It is treatment and the court system working together. And a lot of the research says that in order for somebody to be successful, they have to be held accountable and they have to be given treatment appropriate to their need. So those two things are at the core of drug court. There are 10 key components that tell you whether you're actually operating an evidence-based treatment court or not. And I'll just go over those quickly. It helps give a broad understanding of what it is we do and why. The very first one is to integrate treatment with the justice system right along with case processing. So we have a large team that meets every week to accept people, to staff people who are participating, and to make decisions about sanctioning people or rewarding people. Those team members come from judges, the public defender's office, the district attorney's office, myself, probation and parole, Marathon County law enforcement, jail staff with the Wausau PD, Addict Correctional Services treatment staff, and basically that team meets at least every week. Sometimes we meet additional times to discuss specific cases, or if somebody's really struggling, we'll roundtable participants and things like that. But those team members come together and put a lot of effort into getting to know individuals, offering assistance, and trying to help people with their recovery. When I talk about treatment and accountability working together, drug court does not sanction people for drug use. Drug court does sanction people for lying about drug use, tampering with their UAs, selling drugs, things like that are different from the use. So we've had a really hard time since drug court has started getting our participants to understand that, because they are very used to lying. That's what they do. They want to cover up their use, they want to deny their use, and it usually takes them a while to adjust to the fact that I can come clean and admit that I used and be honest about it, and I will get a therapeutic response, not a jail sanction. And when I talk about a therapeutic response, that is an increase in treatment, an increase in self-help groups, increase in individual sessions or meetings with the team. So it's a very different climate that offenders are used to, and it's a really tough transition. The second component is a non-adversarial approach, which is also very different for the criminal justice system. If you ever watch court TV, you can see that the defender is in there and the prosecutor's in there, and the prosecutor is arguing to send the person away, and the defender is trying to defend the person and get them the least amount of sanction they can. In drug court, everybody comes to the table as a team member. You don't stay in your traditional criminal justice role. You're all working together to look at what that person needs to be successful and the best outcome for that individual in the community. So it's very interesting to see a normal court process and then to be in a staffing where the prosecutor is talking about treatment alternatives and the defense attorney is saying, well, I don't know, they may need a jail sanction. And everybody is a completely different role than they're used to being. The third component is that we have to determine eligibility very quickly. So a traditional court case, especially a felony case, can go on and on and on pre-trial before there is any type of sentencing onto probation or any type of services provided. So the goal for drug court is to get the person identified, assessed, and sentenced to the program. Our goal for ourselves is within 60 days, where traditionally it could take a year for somebody to have things resolved and both sides to fight about what's in the best interest, and maybe a pre-sentence investigation done to see what sentence is appropriate for that person. In this process, the person is explained the program, they admit that what they have done, they choose to participate, and the sentencing takes place very quickly, because the research also says that the quicker somebody begins treatment, the more successful they are. So we do move very quickly, ask for a lot of favors from the judges to get on calendars, to get people sentenced and participating quickly. The fourth component is access to a continuum of treatment services. All the people that are in the program have been assessed. We know what their treatment needs are. We only accept people with pretty significant treatment issues because this is such an intensive program. And that was one thing when we started this program that I wanted a promise from the county board and from administration, is that we will provide services to people at the level of care that they require. So if somebody is assessed as needing residential services, we will figure out how to get them residential services. We don't want to have a program where everybody gets the same thing regardless of what your needs are. So we work very well with the local resources, and then we also have sent people out of town for different services that are required. We also, when we talk about the continuum of treatment, most of these people do not have stable housing or clean places to live. It's very difficult to focus on making changes and stopping use when you're still living with and hanging out with the people who you use drugs with. So we do actually have supportive apartments that my budget funds. We have 2 female and 2 male apartments between the treatment courts. So we can provide sober housing to up to 4 females and 4 males at any given time. We typically have people transition out of that housing within 3 to 4 months, but that gives them a chance to stabilize in the program, get some significant treatment done, look for some work. We help them get assistance for down payments and things like that. And our goal is to move them into their own sober housing pretty quickly so that that resource is not is available for other people when they need it. The fifth component is regular and random drug testing. That helps with accountability. A lot of times, initially, people will test positive and they'll lie and lie and lie. We've heard some of the craziest stories about how that substance got into their urine. We could probably write a book. and then we find as time goes on, they'll come in for their test and they'll say, it's positive, and they'll say, yeah, I used. And then a little bit further down the line, they'll get ready to give them a test and they'll say, yeah, that's gonna be positive. And then a lot of times, even further in the program, they'll call us up and say, I relapsed. So that's what we work towards, is that honest communication, because if you're lying and manipulating, you're not moving in the right direction to stop using. So that's, the drug testing actually is at a minimum of 3 times a week on a random basis. They have to call in. If it's their color, they have to report. And we use urine testing. We also use oral swabs for those who don't drink enough water or claim that they can't produce. So, a coordinated response to violations is the 6th key component, and this is very important. We sanction behavior consistently and expectedly. They pretty much know what they're in for ahead of time. They understand what sanctions happen. We actually keep a list of, lying for the first time in phase 1. This is what we typically do. We want it to be very expected so that they know. We look at behaviors realistically. So somebody who misses an appointment in phase 1 is a less severe sanction than somebody who misses an appointment in phase 3. Because as you progress through the program, the expectations become bigger. Again, use is not sanctioned. If you lie to us about use, or we catch you with a Whizzinator, which has happened, those types of things are what we're sanctioning. But more important than the sanction is the praise. Our program goal is to praise somebody 3 times for every time we have to sanction them. People respond really well to praise, much better than sanctions. They don't like sanctions, but they really enjoy praise. So we give people standing ovations, we give certificates, we give, the judge will give verbal praise. We'll do ice cream socials if we have a week where nobody has relapsed. We've done pizza parties. We even have built into our budget a points system where every week they do their what we call 5 for 5. They get a point with drug court because so many of these people need immediate gratification. We also give out snacks and treats at court when they do their 5 for 5. So their 5 for 5 expectations are that they go to all of their UAs to produce negative samples. They appear at every court session, which is weekly initially, and then it moves out to twice a month and once a month as they move through the program. They make all of their treatment appointments. They either work or maintain 20 hours a week of community service, and they attend all of their self-help meetings, which they're required to attend 3 a week. So they get a lot of rewards in the program. They can earn gift cards with their points. They save them up, and they get to select where they'd like their gift card, and we get them gift cards as a reward. We also buy, at 6 months sober, we buy them lunch. So there's a lot of, and we actually have to track for our drug court grant every time we give praise versus a sanction to make sure that we're, balancing that ratio, because that's where you see your success.
Are you mostly doing with the meth and the heroin addicts only mostly?
Yes, with our drug court, yep. And our OWI court is, all of our courts require somebody to be charged with felony. So either a felony OWI, and of course meth and heroin possession is a felony. So we work with people who are actually prison bound. So they're doing this program instead of going to prison. And the reason we work with that level is because this is a really challenging program for somebody who's truly addicted. And if it's easier to give up and sit in jail for 30 days, that's what they're gonna do. But when they know that they've pled guilty and they have that prison hanging over their head, they're gonna stick with it and they're gonna keep working. The 7th component is an actively engaged judge. We are lucky enough to have 4. And a lot of them will attend everything. They will have one judge preside at each court session. They decide ahead of time who's presiding. They keep up to date on all the participants to the point that if they passed them in the hallway, they know their name, they would hold a conversation, say hello, how are you doing, know what's going on in their life. The research says that a judge needs to spend at least 3 minutes of time interacting with each individual at each court session on a personal level, talking about their progress, what they're struggling with, what they've done well, offering praise. And a lot of our participants report that fear of letting the judge down keeps them on track. They don't want the judge to look down at them or think poorly of them if they make a mistake. So that's a big part of it. 8 is evaluation. We're constantly looking at our numbers, entering into a really large database. Everything we do with people, trying to see how we can improve our program, what's working, what's not working, making changes all along to get the best outcomes we can. 9 is training. Our teams go to a lot of training every year. It's built right into our grant funding. We attend national trainings. We attend the state conferences to keep up to date on the best research and the best things that we should be doing so that we can make changes as the research comes out. And the 10th is community involvement, outreach. Our participants are all required to do community service to give back to the community. We work with a lot of different treatment providers, and we work with the Bridge Clinic. We try and get our people set up with primary care doctors. Many of them don't go to the doctor. Many of them have issues with their teeth that need addressing. And so we look at reaching out to the community, having the community provide the services that they need to help them get on track, and then having them give back to the community. So that is pretty much our drug and OWI court. Each program can take up to 25 people. Our OWI court has been close at times to capacity, but we've never had to turn anybody away because we're full. Unfortunately, I anticipate drug court possibly being a different scenario. We just started accepting referrals in February, entering people in starting court in March, and we're pushing that 20 mark already, and those individuals are going to be in the program for a significant amount of time. The typical length of stay in OWI court is 18 months. I anticipate drug court being longer than that. I think we've had one person who made it through OWI court without any sanctions and actually completed within 13 months. But it is a phase system, and there's certain things you have to do in each phase to move to the next phase, and you have to complete all the phases in order to graduate.
Is this somebody who's involved in drug court able to be using medication-assisted treatment?
Yes. Yes, we have several that are. We work to get them whatever services they need. And actually our grant requires that. We're not allowed to deny somebody access to that. So we haven't yet had anybody come in that's already using it, but we have made referrals. We've been using Vivitrol a lot just because of the accountability of that. It's one shot once a month. We know you get it, and we know when you need it again, and it's not something that can be traded or abused. So it's worked out pretty well for the people we have that are using that. And then justice programs as a whole, what I'm working on right now, and Ruth has been helping out a lot with this, is a pretrial initiative for those people who aren't going into drug court, that are in that pretrial status for a very long time, and they're on substances and they're told to stop using. We're working on developing a much better system to meet with people in the jail prior to initial appearance, do some basic assessments on them, determine who's at risk to continue to use and not show up for court and have new violations, and then working at, can't force anybody pre-trial to do any type of services, but we can certainly offer services. We had done a survey, it's probably been about a year already, where we asked people who were in our condition of bond program if services were available to you, would you participate? I think like 85% of them said yes, so that probably means 50% of them might. But it's a start. So we're looking at offering help to those people quickly, getting them involved where they have a case manager to kind of help them find their way pre-trial so that they don't keep getting new charges while they're waiting for court. So that's our newest project. I think that's it.
I was like, I was stand up. I'm like, I'd like to have our panelists kind of sit so you can turn. I'd like to invite Jesse up as well. Jesse is individual in recovery. He has experience within the criminal justice system as a person going through different programs at different levels. So he's lived the experience that these guys have talked about. So because of time, I'm going to offer Jesse up as question and answers as well, because I think it's important for him to share. Before that, just a little bit about what he was exposed to, what worked for him, at what point was he like, okay, now I'm ready. And so Jesse, I'm going to ask you to keep your comments short, because I think people might have questions as well. And then if you guys want to get yourself situated up here, and Jesse, you can chat over here.
Okay.
Chat away.
You want me to say stuff?
Yeah, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm in recovery. I've been clean for 2.5 years now, and it's difficult because to say what works and what doesn't, I can't really say, because everyone has their own pathway to recovery. I think that my recovery was initiated long before I knew what the term recovery was. The first treatment or anything that I had to go to, I was an addict. I was screwing up my life, doing stupid stuff, and then I self-destructed and I went to jail, right? And I wasn't in recovery or anything. I went to jail for 3 months and my life just decayed more. My mental state decayed more. I didn't really have anything, and I got out. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to do better, I guess, but I didn't know how to do that. And so I didn't do drugs for a little while and then just fell right back into it. Same people, same stuff. I earned all the charges I got, I earned them. What I did, I earned them. I earned a domestic charge, and I had to go to a program called SAFE. And, you know, at first I had a bad attitude about it, and I'm like, well, this is stupid. And, you know, my whole family's, oh, you gotta go to that dummy class, you know, and so there's this stigma that it's stupid, it's for dummies, it's whatever. No, it was one of the best things I've ever gone through, because they taught about communication, something I didn't know, something that my family doesn't know, so how could they have taught me that? And that, I didn't consider myself in recovery, but that was like the initiation of my recovery. I still didn't recover then. You know, it's a journey, you know, it doesn't happen all at once, and there's not one program that's going to do it for you. You know, I wish there was, that'd be great. I've been through everything they've talked about, the falsifying UAs and getting caught with Wizenators, and I've done all of that, except for drug court, because it wasn't around when I was going through what I was going through. And I went to prison, and I spent 2 years in prison. And I could have sat that whole time doing nothing. I've seen there's so much wasted energy and potential in jail and in prison. I had to wait a year before I could even get into any kind of treatment in prison. But I spent that time studying spirituality and working out and meditating and doing yoga and doing things to try to better myself, because I had it instilled in me then, before I went to prison. I was given a Bible that said, rescued, not arrested. And I like that a lot, you know, because it rescued me, really. You know, it extracted me from my life because I needed that. Because all the little treatment things, and you know, we have like the 21-day treatment and stuff like that. Maybe that's cool, that's great. I don't know how effective it is, because I needed to be extracted from my life. I didn't want to. I don't want to go to prison. Nobody does, you know. But I spent 2 years in prison, and it was one of the best things for me. And I'm not saying that's the only thing. Yeah, send them all to prison. Like, absolutely not, because just like Ronda was saying about the jail, prisons are overcrowded too. So overcrowded that they're sending people in prison to jails to house them for like 3 months. So then that puts off your treatment and all that stuff, because you're just sitting in jail now. And there's so much wasted energy and potential there. I eventually earned my release through CIP, or prison boot camp. And that was one of the best things for me too, because it's about accountability. They have the phases, and it sucked a lot, but you know, for a cause. And you know, if I was doing something stupid, I had to work out, I had to do push-ups or whatever, you know. It was a great thing for me, and that's where I learned the term that, you know, I earned what I got. You know, well, I earned my freedom today too. I got out 6 months early because of that. Yeah, I don't know. I've been out for 6 months now, today, actually. And I'm a recovery coach now, you know. I work with some guys getting out of jail, and I think that's a huge thing, is the re-entry, because it wasn't there for me. When I got out, I didn't know what to do. They stuck me in my grandma's basement and said, all right, figure it out, and you're on probation now. And back then I was so afraid of it, and I couldn't admit that it was drugs, you know, because it was everybody else's problem. It was everybody else, it was everything else in my life, and it definitely wasn't the drugs. That was the last thing I ever would have assumed, or, you know. So yeah, so probation and parole felt like my enemy, you know. We're watching you. Do better, but we're watching you. Like, how? How am I going to do better? I think that, you know, that might have changed some now. Like my probation officer is, you know, I'm doing good things now, so I don't have a reason to be afraid of her. I'm excited to go in there and tell her, hey, look what I'm doing today. Drug court, I think, is the best thing ever. You know, it wasn't around for me when I was sentenced, which is okay. You know, this has been my pathway to recovery. But I think it's a great thing for people today. It forces them, well, it doesn't force them. They have the option to not do it. You can go to prison if you want to. You can go sit on your bunk and watch TV for a couple of years or whatever. But drug court's good, you know, and then people come to the 12-step programs, you know, and I can't sit here and say, oh, go to this, you know, because it's the whole anonymity thing, right? But they're huge. The 12-step programs are great. And drug court giving people that possibility and that option before going to prison is great. So, yeah, I mean, it's taken me many years of screwing up and doing stupid stuff and blaming everyone else and going through all those programs, but they all compiled into something. They planted seeds along the way. So, I think it's all important. I guess that's all I got. Thanks.
If you guys want to ask questions of our group, you can direct them right at them. Again, keep it short just so everybody has a chance to answer. I'm going to request again, please make sure you fill out your evaluations, and then when I email out, make sure that you did sign in. If you didn't sign in, I don't know where our sign-ins are, but if you didn't sign in, make sure that you do. There's one here. And the handouts are all posted online. So with that, questions? Anybody have questions? Nobody? Oh, no. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Lori, for the drug treatment program, when it takes like 60 days to determine eligibility, where do these clients stay during those 60 days?
It depends. Some of them have, so when we first got the program running, a lot of them were already being held in jail because, as I mentioned, the pretrial issue and continuing to commit new crimes, and then they were held. But we do have some that are out on bond, and so we move very quickly. It's very difficult to get them to come in for treatment or for assessment appointments if they're out. But a lot of them are in the community, and some of them are in jail. We even end up traveling to other jails to try and assess people because the jail has shipped them somewhere, so.
Question, go ahead.
For Ronda. For the volunteering in the program in the jail, one of the barriers I see is the length of time that a volunteer has to spend out of jail. Is there any flexibility with that? Because, I mean, we have some major volunteers that would be such an effective person, but they might have been in jail, in the last, 8 years ago. You can't go.
So technically the rule is 10 years out of incarceration. However, recently the jail administrator, thankfully, was willing to agree to a 3-year, depending on, like a case-by-case basis, depending on that history. So that would only apply to our NA and AA volunteers, just because of the circumstances. So yes, that opens up some options. Yet I still invite anyone to contact me. Hello, please.
Thank you.
Is that 3 years out of Marathon County or out of any institution?
Ideally out of any institution, definitely out of Marathon County.
Question? Is it Brian?
Could you address probation holds? I've seen so many people in my lifetime have a treatment program, have a job, have a life interrupted by a hold for some allegation that's brought against them that turns out to be unfounded after the allegation, and the job's lost, momentum's lost. Is there any way to kind of look at those situations and have some flexibility in jail being the only option, immediate jail?
Yeah, so that's a tough one because the allegations you refer to are allegations of threats to harm or allegations of physical violence or sexual violence. And so those allegations by department policy need to be taken seriously. We need to remove that person from the community while we investigate that allegation. So the flexibility lies in the credibility of the person who makes the allegation. However, as we know, believing victims is a really important component to holding abusers accountable. So when allegations are made, it's a really difficult position to be in. Where things are found unfounded at times is because of the investigation that we do once they're put in custody. Unfortunately, because they're already on a form of supervision, which may be different from a citizen in the community, our policy is that we are going to mitigate that risk immediately and deal with it that way. So it is a hard situation. Certainly, I think in general the department has really focused on not utilizing short-term holds in situations that could be addressed in different ways because of job emphasis and other things like that, and just in particular because the seriousness of the violation being like a using violation may not warrant that at this stage in the game. So I think we've made a significant shift in trying to consider those factors. I think the problem lies with what I think you were touching on, which is the mandatory detention policy, and that comes from a department-wide policy. It's a little more black and white.
Questions? Going once? Going twice. Okay. So Again, sign-in evaluations if you want CEUs for today. There's extra forms up here, leave them up here. Grab a snack on your way out. There's extra information about our recovery coaching network. Here, and Laura's cards are up here as well. Grab a magnet, grab a pin, help support the work that we're doing here. Have a wonderful